On today's show, the roster is set, but injury concerns on the blue line are being drawn into focus. What's the latest? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holmi. I've covered the Capitals for the past 4 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about injury concerns on the blue line. Listen, going into the preseason here, we had a pretty good idea of what the lineups would look like. But much like every other sport, injuries are being drawn into focus. I'm talking about the injury to Dylan Mcilrath and the scary moment today at practice with Declan Chisholm. What's the latest on the blue line? A bit later, we'll talk about a matchup preview in the Capitals versus the Bruins. But just to get it going here, the roster is set. And when Spencer Carberry and, the assistants and Chris Patrick said it was not going to be easy to whittle down this lineup to the 23-man roster for opening night, well, it was not hyperbole, as that is the case, as the Capitals did, in fact, get down to where they needed to be. And all things considered, they were the best players that are going to be playing against Boston, despite some of my thoughts about who should be in the lineup. I really believe that it is the best players that are going to be out on the ice. And ultimately, of course, the players that are going to give the Capitals the best chance at winning games. So let's dive into it here in the first segment of today's show. We're talking about the roster, and finally it's set. And there were a lot of teams around the NHL that, are making moves today and, trying to get it down there, reassigning players down to their AHL affiliates to get in compliance is sometimes difficult. And I think the Capitals really did have some difficult decisions to make, but they did that. The Caps finalized their roster at 23 players. And to get there, a few moves had to happen. Ivan Miroshnichenko was sent to Hershey. And when you take a look at him, he's right there. I think that we will see him at some point this season, whether it's injury or inconsistent play, that I believe that Ivan Miroshnichenko is right there and ready to be NHL talent. The fact that he doesn't have to clear waivers, I think, gives him the ability, of course, and the Capitals the ability to have him go down to Hershey and back up to the Capitals if required. So I think that is what is behind it there. But talking about depth defenders, and Dylan Mcilrath was placed on the injured reserve. And I know not a guy that's out on the ice on a night in, night out basis, but, one of the extra auxiliary defenseman, if you will. If you know what hits the fan, that you can break the glass and pull out a Dylan Mcilrath, well, he is on the injured reserve. And the second segment of today's show, I'll talk about some other scary moments and the injury scares surrounding this team. And then also Ethan Frank and, yes, Clay Stevenson cleared waivers and are headed to Hershey. Despite my thoughts that Clay Stevenson would get scooped up, what happened there is there was 3 prominent players that were going to get put on the waiver wire, 3 goalies, and 2 of those players were scooped up. Clay Stevenson was not. I think that at the end of the day, they looked at the skill set of the other goalies and just the prohibitive factor of Clay Stevenson's contract. In any event, I'm very, very happy to say that he did clear waivers and will most likely be netminder number 1 in Hershey. Because to have that guy walk for nothing, I think that would have been a bitter pill to swallow. But again, I wasn't the only one that was thinking that. Elliot Friedman as well definitely thought that Clay Stevenson, at least ostensibly, could have been on the move on the waiver wire. But kind of tough break for those guys, especially Stevenson. He had a solid camp, and it's still my belief that he would make an excellent option as a number 2 netminder for the Capitals. I've always said, and if you're an everydayer of the show, I perceive that Charlie Lindgren is a good netminder. I never think he tracked elite, but that's the reality of a numbers game in the NHL, and it's about making the best decisions and hoping they pay off, right? Sonny Milano, he sticks around as the extra forward. And, quite a thing for him to have happen, right? That he played all of 3 games last season, and a real question mark. And to be clear here, I didn't think he was going to make the roster. But what did he do? He came into camp. He came into the preseason games, a man on a mission, and a tip of the hat goes to Sonny Milano for doing the thing that got him as an extra forward. Not going to be in the lineup night in and night out, except, like I said, injuries are always drawn into focus. But for him to be on the big team, even as an extra, is a big thing for Mr. Milano. Also, Hendrix Lapierre. Let's get hyped for Hendrix Lapierre. What a great story. We know that the Capitals signed him to that bridge deal, a prove-it deal. Like, we are going to try to retread this tire with Hendrix Lapierre one more time. And I want to believe that this is the season. He is the answer at that third line center position. The third line generally last season was the worst line by the Capitals, but specifically they failed to find a true third line center. Lapierre started the season kind of just based out of necessity. Didn't work out. The Capitals traded for and acquired Lars Eller, who was meh at the end of the day. So if Hendrix Lapierre can sustain and just if we can see what we saw in the preseason, then I think that he is going to fit the bill. And you take a look at the players surrounding him, which I'll talk about here in just a second, I think is going to make that third line a strength of this team, if you can believe it. Another great story here as well is Vincent Iorio. And it's all about next man up, right? And that is the case when we're talking about injury concerns with Dylan Mcilrath. And the question marks surrounding Matt Roy and what we saw with Declan Chisholm, that Vincent Iorio, at least for now, is on the big team, making it, interesting storyline, right? That oftentimes, people get supplanted based on injury, and people are like, that can't happen. Someone can't lose their job based because of injury. Then you've never heard the Tom Brady story. It absolutely can happen. And this is a great opportunity for Vincent Iorio to seize the day. If you want just a real quick take on Vincent Iorio, I think he is more of a multi-dimensional defender than Dylan Mcilrath. It's not a knock against Dylan. I'm just saying that he has some snarl to his game. But that's kind of it. By his own admission, he's not the fleetest of foot. He's not a quick skater. And when things got real in the playoffs last year, when Marty got injured, they reached for Alexiev instead of McIlrath. I think that you need a guy like Vincent Iorio around, where if a Faravari, God forbid, gets injured again, or another player of that kind of impact, that you have a guy like Vincent Iorio that can go into the lineup and fill in flawlessly. But so let's do it. Let's take a look at the forward lines to start off. Now, of course, like I say on the show, it is written in pencil with a big eraser around. Don't etch it in stone, because what we saw last year is the Capitals fall and everything was put in the blender. But as of right now, what it is Protas left wing, first line, Strome center, and Ovechkin right wing. Of course, that's a work, Ovechkin kind of always at some point will flip over to the left. But in any event, first line, Protas, Strome, Ovechkin. Line number 2, McMichael, Dubois, and Wilson. Love that line. Already some early chemistry. Dubois, Wilson, big bodies. McMichael, the greasy guy that does whatever it takes to get a goal. And Dubois and Wilson, great goal scorers in their own right. I think that second line is going to be amazing. The third line, like I talked about just a minute ago, Beauvillier, Lapierre, and Leonard. Wow. right? I think that, when you took a look at the third line last year, you kind of wanted to cover your eyes or plug your nose to just let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the first, second, or fourth line, but let's not talk about that third line. Go ahead, take the blinders off. I'm okay going into this season with Beauvillier, Lapierre, and Leonard. And to round it out, the fourth line, Nick Dowd stirring the drink on the fourth line, of course. So that line consists of Duhaime, Dowd, and Sordiff. Sordiff's going to have to bring it. That fourth line is just in title only. They are usually tasked with big things. And, you got to live up to the potential and the expectation of Nick Dowd. He's the quarterback at the end of the day of that fourth line. But, then you've got Sonny Milano waiting in the wings. If anything goes awry with the forwards, you got Sonny Milano there, and if he is anything like we saw in the preseason, I think that looks pretty good. But let's just take a look at that top six. The first line, Protas, Strome, and Ovi. There's a little bit of creativity, a little size, and obviously the firepower of the great eight. And I'm looking for Dylan Strome to continue to take steps forward as that first line center, keep feeding those setups, and the chemistry just works. That Alex Ovechkin, a couple seasons ago after Nicky stepped away, he said that, it was a bit of a turnstile at the center position. Strome is the steady Eddie at the center position on that first line. Second line, being that we're talking about the top six here, McMichael, Dubois, and Wilson. Oof. That has got some excellent potential. And what do I mean there? You've got Dubois who can hold the puck. McMichael's got that shot and speed, and Wilson brings the heavy game that this Capitals forward lines combos is lethal, I guess is what I'm going to say. And it'll be interesting to see, how they fare in game one against Boston, as I think, it'll be mixed and matched. It's not going to be set in stone, like I said, but at least in paper, that looks really, really well. And that line in particular, the second line, is going to be tough to play against. Big bodies, gamers out there. Like I said, the third line, Beauvillier, Lapierre, Leonard, an interesting mix. Lapierre has been turning heads in camp. I think this is the season that he seizes the day and shows the NHL at large and the Capitals fans that I am the guy. I finally arrived. And to see him earn that spot, that is a big confidence builder from him for the fans. And what was said is that at camp, he kind of knew that, he made the roster and was grinning from ear to ear, and a likable guy at the end of the day, a gregarious sort of person. And you take a look at it, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Put the work in. That's the way to do things right. Like last season, he didn't work out. He didn't sulk. He didn't moan. He went to Hershey and dominated. And now he is being rewarded great, in large part because of a great camp and a great preseason to solidifying a spot, that third line center, which, a lot of people thought was quite easily going to be Connor McMichael's. But, like I said, Milano in there, as well as that extra forward as a luxury item. That is great. If someone's banged up or you just need an offensive spark, you've got a proven score to jump right in. When you want to tweak the pH balance a little bit, insert a Milano, and there you go. On the defense, like I said, Mcilrath is out, which bumps Iorio up to stay with the big club. For now, anyway. That is a huge opportunity for Vincent, and well-deserved. Put on the pounds, which was told what he should do, and he did do that, and is not a guy that is so easily driven off the puck. A fierce defender. If it's not this season, however this shakes out, Vincent is right there, and honestly, a show of faith from Spencer Carberry to have him hanging around. A big tip of the hat goes to Vincent as well. A reward for games well played. Matt Roy, though, a bit of a question mark, still dealing with that injury as I record this. We'll see what the status looks like at puck drop. And you hate to see, guys banged up to start the season, but that's hockey. It's part of the grind. And overall, I like the roster. There's a good blend of youth and experience. They didn't go too heavy with veterans like we've seen before. Think back to, when Peter Laviolette was here. He didn't really want any youth inserted into the mix. He wanted the proven performers, even though some of them on the back nine of their NHL careers, see Oshie and Backstrom, etc. that finally that it is a good mix of veterans and rookies, and they're giving the young guys a legitimate chance to succeed. So a really great opportunity. Lapierre, Leonard, Iorio, they're not here just filling jerseys. This isn't a token move or token moves, if you will. They earned this right here. Let's not take it away from them. Lapierre, Leonard, Iorio, Milano as well. Guys that really put the sweat equity in to get exactly where they're at right now. All right, so coming up here after the break, we're going to talk about injury scares. I'm talking about Declan Chisholm, a scary moment at camp. What's the latest? I'll discuss straight ahead. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, I love how there's so many different ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live line games during the game. And the thing I like about it, so I have my team, and if you're watching, I'm sure that you're all into it when it's the Commanders, or maybe you're a Ravens fan. But say it's a Sunday, and I'm not really into any of the teams that are playing. I want vested interest. All I have to do is open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, that game got that much more exciting. I know you're going to love it. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today to get started. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in the second segment here today, we're talking about a scary moment. And it surrounds Declan Chisholm. He took a skate up high, and when he lifted his shorts up there, you could see that the skate blade had actually cut his leg. He had to get the attention of, it was Rasmus Sandin, and, a bunch of people came out to take care of the situation. But after, Spencer Carberry said that it's still too early to say, but he doesn't believe that it is too serious. So let's dive into that in the second segment of today's show. And, like I said, things can change on a moment's notice. That I said that the blue line, is in good shape. Don't expect any big changes. And then all of a sudden, a curveball thrown at the Capitals that boom, Dylan Mcilrath, Matt Roy, and Declan Chisholm. Some worse for wear than others, but in any event, that is how things can change in a hurry. Declan Chisholm took a skate cut in practice, and I mean a bad one. He had to be rushed off the ice, and initially, Coach Spencer Carberry said, quote, a scary situation, unquote. And the NHL has done a lot of different things to protect the players. You can't wrap them in bubble wrap. How they have the extra protection on the back of skates to protect tendons there. But it's just the nature of the beast. It is, a full contact sport, and you're playing on skates that are really sharp. And, that's the tough part. And then you factor into flying pucks and hockey sticks, and it's a rough sport. Oftentimes people say that the NFL is the roughest sport. I'm going to go ahead and say that hockey is more tough and more physical than the NFL. We could argue about that at a different time, but let's just say that it is physical and in any event, a scary situation. And looking at the video footage of people that were there, you could read the room that it was a scary moment. No one was moving, and it really got quiet in a hurry. Now the good news, early word is that he is going to be okay. Again, we'll end up seeing on Wednesday evening if he is, in fact, good to go. I understand that Declan was an extra anyway, but, just with Dylan, everything, and Matt Roy, it's kind of, a work in progress, a fluid situation, if you will. But in any event, with Declan, as far as that is concerned, a terrifying moment, because those kind of things, especially a escape cut to the leg, and it looked like, it's hard to tell. There's a photo there that you could see, and you could see about that much of his leg. Excuse me, and you could see that it was bloody. What it looked like underneath of that, I don't know. But anytime that you cut a leg and there's blood coming out like that, scary. And that's the kind of freak accident that you see. Think of Carl Hagelin when he was here. Ultimately had to step away from hockey because he took a stick up high in a practice and was never quite the same after that. His vision was always a little bit fuzzy in that one eye. He struggled with depth perception. That make no mistake about it, things can change in a hurry. So at the end of the day, Declan Chisholm, crossing our fingers and toes, hoping you're good to go. What we saw, just talking about, we understand that the injury's bad, but talking about what he brings to the table for the Capitals, a really great option as an extra defender. And, a great shot, right? That he scored a goal in that game there, looked really good. Next up, being that we're talking about injury concerns on the blue line, is Dylan Mcilrath. He did not skate and is listed as officially on the injured reserve. That is a hit to your depth and physical presence. Like I talked about in the first segment, that Dylan Mcilrath, even though I kind of dub him as single dimensional, if you will, that he is that physical enforcer. And what I like about his game is that when he's in there, it takes the pressure off of Tom Wilson to be so physical. And that's why Vincent Iorio staying up matters so much. He's young, but they trust him enough to handle the NHL pace. And that's the tough part, because, I think that the Capitals blue line, it was pretty good going into all of this. In big picture, I hate to minimalize the players that were injured, but save Matt Roy, we're talking about depth defenders. We're talking about Declan Chisholm, where there was no master plan of him starting night in and night out. And same goes for Dylan Mcilrath, that Matt Roy, who's being monitored right now, is the only player of real significance. I hate to say that, but that's kind of how it's at right now. But Matt Roy didn't skate. He is being monitored, and sounds like a precautionary move, but he is definitely still not 100%. A bit of a deja vu for Matt Roy. He started his first season with the Capitals in a similar position. So you take a look at it. If Roy's limited and McIlrath's out, you're going to have to lean on the depth chart really fast. And that's the question of what kind of role Vincent Iorio takes. It'll be interesting to see. I guess, all of it will be determined on if Matt Roy is good to go. All that means more responsibility, though, for the steady eddies, the pillars of the blue line. I'm talking Faravari, Chychrun, and Sandin, to pick up the load early. It's not ideal, but that is what the Capitals are going to face all season long. Setbacks that, you're going to have to be prepared for. So that's the difficult thing, but it's one of the things that, the Capitals are going to have to be prepared for, and they are prepared for, is they have that needed depth. That injury did arise, and hopefully, that Vincent Iorio, what he saw in the preseason, is ultimately going to be good enough. I think that the Capitals are in a good position, despite the couple of injuries, or few potential injuries, that they should fare rather well against the Boston Bruins on Wednesday night. All right, so coming up here after the break, we talk about matchup reviews. I'm talking about Lapierre. I'm talking about Sonny Milano. What to expect. Matchup previews for the Capitals versus the Bruins. Straight ahead. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast, easy? Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed Sponsored Job puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. And the thing that I love about Indeed is I use it at work already. I get involved in the hiring and the firing, and sometimes people are bringing in paper applications, and then we got Indeed, and my life got a whole lot easier. I think it'll make it that much easier for you as well. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on the Locked On Capitals podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. So in the final segment of today's show, we're talking about a matchup preview, Capitals versus Bruins in game one of the regular season, and it is going to be an exciting game. Why? Well, enough of the preseason, enough of the training camp. Let's talk about games of significance. Let's talk about game one of the regular season Wednesday night against the Bruins. And, the first thing, or one of the things I'm watching is the defense. And who's in the lineup, like I talked about in the previous segment. With Roy and Mcilrath not fully available, how do those minutes shake out? Do we see Vincent Iorio thrown right into it? Or does Carberry shelter him a little bit? Maybe pair him with a steady vet like Chychrun. I think we'll find out how much they trust him right out of the gate. A great opportunity, like I said, for Vincent Iorio to show what he's got. That is one of the things that I'm going to be looking for in the game. Second is Hendrix Lapierre, and man, this is his chance to put his stamp on the third line and said, let me hear it. I am the guy to solidify that third line center position. I'm the quarterback. I'm the guy stirring the drink at the third line position. That's what we're hoping for. He earned that third line center position, but this isn't the preseason anymore. He is going up against NHL talent, real speed, real physicality. We're taking the gloves off. We're taking off the velvet gloves here. He is going to face some physicality against some big dudes in the NHL. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares. I want to see if he can hold his own in the defensive zone and still create offense. What's the chemistry going to be like with Beauvillier and Leonard? Third, Sonny Milano, again, probably won't be in the game, but if he is, and when he is, we know that he is the extra forward, but how long does that last? If the Capitals are, as a matter of fact, looking for, some offensive jumper cables, then look no further than Sonny Milano. He's got skill and he can produce. If the third line or fourth line struggles to score, I wouldn't be shocked if Milano is in the next game. I don't know if they'll jump to conclusions quite that quickly, but if you start to see any dip or like, that guy wasn't the guy that we thought he is, then I think a Sonny Milano in the mix is just perfect. And now, special teams, that is always the story. I talked about it last season that special teams is important early in the season, gets magnified more in the latter part of the season where the games have that much more significance. How will the Capitals produce on the power play and the penalty kill? Definitely, of course, stating the obvious can change the outcome of games. We're hoping to be dialed in. And then Alex Ovechkin, we all know what he can do, but it's about the setup. You got to have clean entries, quick puck movement, and better looks off the half wall. What to expect from the Great Eight going into his 21st season, his 40th year on the planet. It'll be interesting because Boston's penalty kill is strong. They'll pressure the first pass, so execution matters. And this isn't the preseason. Every mistake that you make, any gaffe, will be magnified. One bad turnover, and it can go the other way. And goaltending still has to be rock solid here. Of course, we know that the tandem is set. It is going to be Logan Thompson and Charlie Lindgren as your tandem for the Capitals this season. Again, not too surprising. I know I thought that Clay Stevenson, I still think would be a good option, but I am A-okay with Logan Thompson and Charlie Lindgren. I would expect, of course, that Logan Thompson is the number one netminder to get the start, but I guess we'll see. I think that they're going to continue, or I guess what they're going to do this year, from what we've heard from indications, is maybe not vacillate so much and try to go with the proven performer. That I think that it's Logan Thompson's net. Unless he falters, then they might go in the direction of Charlie Lindgren. But either way you go, The first game can set a tone. Are there any new injuries? What player isn't quite what you thought they were? What I'm looking for early when I'm watching this game is the simple things. Who wins the puck battles in the neutral zone? No lazy back checks. Limit odd man rushes. Let's see your goalie see the pucks, right? That do your best to clear the paint there for him. And get Ovi the puck. Have him set up at his office. If he can make his way over to his office, that we know it is lethal. And that's one of the things that if your offense is struggling, oftentimes it's a good thing to feed it to the great eight. If those boxes are checked, they can hang with Boston. And to be clear here, Boston has a lot to prove this year. In a lot of ways, I think more than the Capitals do, as they took a step back last season. What kind of Boston team do we see? And, they made some decisions that put them in the position they're in. Brad Marchand, now a Panther, I bet they're kind of missing a Marchand to a certain extent. So if not, things could get ugly quickly, as it could with any other NHL team, because you're now facing the best of the best with those teams. But this team has got what it's take. It's got energy. And it's got some new blood, right? That it is not a carbon copy, a one-size-fits-all. I think that they're hungry to prove that last year making it to the second round of the playoffs isn't their ceiling, that they have more that they can do. And right now, before the first game, I'm optimistic. I want to see how this all unfolds. I would like for the issues on the blue line to be taken care of, even though I know that's not going to be the end of it. I mean, injuries are going to be a thing. We know that. But as long as the pillars of the blue line, you know who I'm talking about, Carlson, Chikrin, Faravari, Sandin, these kind of guys, let's make sure that those guys in particular can stay healthy and not get injured. Because once you start taking steps down the depth chart, that's when things can go awry. But right now, feeling optimistic, I think the Capitals very well will win this first game. I think they're going to get off to a great start. I guess time will only tell. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered 5 days a week, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holmi, and I'll talk to you again next time.